Hey there, Mikey's crew. It's your old pal Michael, and hello, sports fans as well, as we begin another edition of Sports Talk, talking about another week of college football. Western's big win over North Carolina Central. I say big as in score-wise. It's a good win for the program, but quality of opponent though, nah. But it gets their team working on things and gets them going in the right direction. Michigan has another blowout win on Saturday. Is that they had that against Central Florida. However, they didn't look good in a couple areas, and we'll talk about that coming up. Also, going to talk about some of the big disappointments over the weekend. What teams disappointed, and also the controversial ending of the Central Michigan Oklahoma State game. We'll recap the NFL scores, and we'll talk a little bit of Detroit Tigers baseball. It's going to be a long edition of Sports Talk, so stay tuned, stick around. First off, let's talk about that Central Michigan Oklahoma State game. The end of it wasn't so great. Oklahoma State took the lead. They're up 28-24. They're trying to run the clock out, and they take a couple of knees. They get the down to 5 seconds to go. Central Michigan only had one timeout left. They had already used it. Oklahoma State's letting the play clock run all the way down to 1 before they call their timeouts. So 5 seconds left. It's fourth down. They snap the ball. Mason Rudolph throws the ball down the left sideline. Incomplete. Game over. Clock had expired. Refs decide they decide to call intentional grounding. There was no receivers that had run a route on that play, so they called intentional grounding, and they gave Central Michigan one on time down. However, going back, if you look at the rule book, Central Michigan should never have had an untimed down. What the rules state is if there is a live ball foul when the time expires, there would be one untimed down. That is if it's on the defense. If it's on the offense, you're going to decline the penalty unless in this case it's on the offense that has the ball and you're the ones losing at that time. So you got that one untimed down. However, they said there would be However, in the rule book it says there would be no untimed down if there happens to be a loss of down with that penalty. So the play should have never. So Central Michigan should have never even had a shot at this play. So Central snaps it. Cooper Rush scrambles to his right, throws it down the field. His receiver catches it, laterals it to another receiver who then scampers to the outside and gets to the end zone. And Central Michigan wins the game. And all the Central fans can rejoice that they beat Oklahoma State. And they had, once again, another lateral play. It brought me back to when they beat or not when they beat, but when they had the Hail Mary lateral play in the Bahamas Bowl against Western Kentucky as well. And then they decided to go for 2 and didn't get it and lost. Well, they didn't have to do that this time. The touchdown gave them the win. And there's been a lot of people out there that have been saying, since the play should never have happened, they should just overturn the ending of the game and give Oklahoma State the win. Now, granted, I do agree that the play should have never happened in the first place, but the refs should have known the rule book, and these refs, by the way, were from the Mid-American Conference, and this crew has been suspended. There's people upstairs that also should have been buzzing down to the refs saying, hey, this should be happening, should not be happening. This is in the rule book stating that if it's a loss of down, they don't get an untimed down. So the people upstairs should have known that as well. Even like the coordinators for Oklahoma State could have buzzed down to Mike Gundy and if they knew the rules. Now Mike Gundy did take credit, saying he didn't really blame the officials. He said part of this is my fault. I should have shouldn't have called a play like that. I should have ran a receiver out. And yeah, he's basically saying he should have ran a receiver out, and then this would have never been a controversy. We never would have had this. So he's blaming himself partially, but most of it's going to fall on the refs. But, I do agree that the play should never have happened. But the thing is that the play did happen. Central won, and you can't take that away from him. You can't go back and overturn that, because otherwise what that's going to lead to is we're going to go back in games, and we're going to try to overturn a lot of other stuff. And if college football at the end of a game is going to be looking at that and, say one team wins and all of a sudden they just, the game ends and it's like 5 minutes later, it's like, oh, we got to overturn this. that's not right, because we'll go back in other sports and do the same thing. You know, what if it's in baseball? It's a full count in the World Series, and the pitcher thought he threw a strike, or the batter thought that it was a ball, and they, awarded the World Series to somebody already, and they go back and say, nope, we got to go play this again. That was ball four. We have another batter coming up. It could happen in the NBA. It could happen in NHL. That's why you can't start overturning this, because if college football does it, it's going to lead to other sports doing it. And so, yeah, like I said, even though I disagree that the play should never have happened, you can't go back and overturn this and take this away from them. You can't take that away from Central, that they ended up winning the game. They won it, and people might start saying, well, then, we need to get, there's always been the talk of, computerizing a lot of stuff instead of having refs on the field or, on the court or whatever. But the thing is the refs are a human part of the game. They're a human element. They're what make the game sometimes. Unfortunately, yeah, the refs happen to, become part of the game. That stuff happens. And you can't change that. It's the human element. If all of a sudden there's no human element there in the calling, then it kind of takes away part of the excitement of the game. So, unfortunately, Oklahoma State ended up losing that game. But, hey, Central took advantage of it, and no one caught it, and they won. And that's the way it goes. And we'll have to see how that fares for them down the road. I don't know. We'll have to see. So let's, talk about some other teams. Disappointments over the weekend. Clemson, who was ranked number 2, now ranked 5th. Not lost, but they beat Troy. If they'd lost, they'd have been dropping big time. They beat Troy 30-24 was the final score. Now, Troy was down in this game, or they were tied at halftime, 10-10. Clemson ended up getting out, I think, to like a 23-10 lead in the fourth quarter. Troy scored, then Clemson scored, then Troy scored again. So it wasn't like Troy was ever, after that point, really within range. However, there wasn't a controversial play in that game where it looked like the Clemson running back, his forward momentum may have been stopped, but the ref had not blown the whistle yet. The ball pops out, and Troy's running back the other way for a touchdown. They would have been able to run back the other way. There was no Clemson players in sight, but they called the ball dead. Clemson next play scores a touchdown to take that 17-10 lead, where it could have, or I think it was 20-10 maybe at that point, because I think it was 13-10 Clemson. But there was also a dumb play in that game from Clemson. They had a punt return right before halftime where the punt returner got free going toward the end zone, and then he nonchalantly drops the ball as he's crossing the line, just before actually he crosses the line. So it's ruled that he did not score. Troy had the ball. And we've seen this many, many times. It's happened in the NFL. It's happened, with the Oregon-Utah game at one point where Utah did that. You know what? If I was coaching any of these guys, I'm telling them, you hold on to that ball. You run across the goal line, and you go and hand that ball to the ref. There's going to be no dropping of it in any such way. You run across with it, and you hand the ball to the ref. Simple as that. That way, you ensure that nobody's going to drop it. And if someone didn't listen to your rules and were to say drop it after they cross the goal line, you yell at that player. So Clemson was pretty disappointing, only winning 30-24. Now, another one, which is a real disappointment, number 9, Georgia beat Nicholls State 26-24, and this team in the past few years has only won a combined total of 9 games. And no, that's not, a 2-year total. It's about a 4-year total of 9 wins. In fact, I remember Western Michigan played them a few years back and stomped on them. It might have been more than a few years now. It may have been 5 or more years. But they stomped on Nicholls State. And Georgia could barely beat Nicholls. Now, Nicholls State may be an improved team, but Georgia should have still beat them. They were 55-point favorite in this game, for goodness sakes. They couldn't even average 3 yards a carry against this team. Nicholls State really, up till the end of this game, had a chance to win. They trailed at halftime 10-7. They actually led in the third quarter 14-13 for a short time before Georgia took the lead. I mean, they were down 26-14 after 3, but they scored 10 points in the fourth quarter, and Georgia had to get a late first down to just beat them, to be able to run out the clock. Very disappointing. Georgia dropped, I think, 7 spots in the rankings. I think they're down to 16th now. But very, very disappointing win by Georgia over the weekend. Arkansas, a very impressive win going on the road to TCU, winning in double overtime 41-38. They blocked a late field goal, by the way, in that game to send it to overtime. Iowa was impressive as they beat Iowa State 42-3. Notre Dame gets back on track, winning 39-10. So some pretty impressive wins across the board. I would definitely say this weekend for some teams, but they're, like I said, there are also some of those like really big disappointing ones. Here's another disappointing one. Illinois State goes into Northwestern after Northwestern lost to Western, and I was all really happy that we just beat a Big Ten team, and still am happy that we did. Don't get me wrong. But Illinois State goes in and wins 9-7 over Northwestern. Now, Northwestern on the day was not very good. Clayton Thorson, 17-41 on the day. Justin Jackson, their star running back, went down with an injury in this game. Northwestern took the lead late, 7-6. Illinois State drove down the field, kicked a game-winning field goal, actually bounced it off the left upright and through the goalpost. So Illinois State walked out with a 9-7 victory. That field goal happened as time expired, by the way. I mean, Illinois State, for them to go in and beat Northwestern, Northwestern in this game was actually only 11.5-point favorite, but still you would have thought they would have been a lot better. But maybe they were still hanging their heads from losing to Western. I don't know, but they better straighten around. 10-win team last year, and right now I'm thinking Northwestern wins 4 or 5 games at the most. I mean, probably those first 2 are supposed to be wins for them. They're losses instead. Now, I could, live with a 1-1 record, because, hey, give Western the win. Give them credit. They won. In fact, we'll talk about them playing Illinois this weekend coming up here. But another disappointing game for Northwestern. They have to get it straightened around against Duke next week. If they go 0-3 heading into non-conference play, watch out. Or heading into conference play, could be a long year for the Wildcats and Pat Fitzgerald. See if there's any other games that really stuck out from over the weekend. No, not really. So we'll go and talk about Western Michigan and their win over North Carolina Central. Western ended up winning that game 70-21. In the game, Darius Phillips had a punt return for a touchdown. Corey Davis had a nice touchdown catch in the third quarter. Or maybe it was third or fourth quarter. Zach Terrell looked really good as well. And Jamari Bogan was really good on the ground. Had over another 100-yard game. And he had a touchdown in there. So Western Michigan did very well over the weekend. They moved now to 2-0 on the season. First time, by the way, they put up 70 points since 1996. And the first time they started 2-0 since 1994. So the Broncos are off and rolling well. They're heading to Illinois this week. And right now, currently, the Broncos are a 3.5-point favorite over the Illini. Now, the Illini are going to be improved this year. They are coached by former NFL head coach Lovie Smith. You may remember he coached the Chicago Bears, so he's right back in the home state of Illinois. However, he's a couple hours, I think he's at least maybe an hour away or so from Chicago. Obviously, Champaign's not that close to Soldier Field in Chicago. Now, for Western to go down there and beat Illinois, they need to do a few things. They need to not turn the ball over. If you turn the ball over on the road, it's going to cost you. So they're going to have to not turn the ball over. They have to have a good, strong running game. They're going to have to control the clock, just like they did against Northwestern. Control the clock, keep Illinois' defense on the field. Short passes for first downs. If you can get the big pass, hit it. So look for Corey Davis to maybe break loose down the sideline. They had to have good special teams play as well. Butch Hampton, if he has field goals attempts, needs to hit them. He's done a good job so far. Also, Darius Phillips, maybe he can break a punt return or a kick return for a touchdown. You saw him do it this past weekend. Last year he did a kick return against Michigan State for a touchdown. They need to just, pound the ball efficiently. Keep using Franklin. Keep using Bogan. Keep rotating them in and out. Keep those legs fresh. And I think you'll have a good running game. The defense is where, like I said, it's a little suspect. Although Western did not give up any points in the second half of the game on Saturday, they need to make sure that they keep that passing game down for Illinois. Wes Lunt is not a bad quarterback. He can stretch the defense out, and he will find receivers. So Western's going to have to key in on him. Put some pressure on Lunt. Make him throw the ball early. Make him turn the ball over as well. That's what Western needs to do, force some turnovers. And they need to stop Illinois' running attack. The thing about Western's running attack is it's really good, but Illinois' defense so far is averaging less than giving up less than 100 yards on the ground. If Western cannot get a run game established in this game, they will not win against Illinois. But I think they have a good chance to go on the road and beat Illinois. Like I said, Terrell needs to play efficiently. The defense needs to step up, and they need to keep that running game going. The running game is really important. Control the ball, control the clock, and Western comes out with a victory. 3.5-point favorite over Illinois. I think this won't be as tough as Northwestern. I was thinking Northwestern was a better team than what they were. They're not showing it right now, though. But I don't think Illinois is even as good as Northwestern is. I think Northwestern was the toughest defense they're going to face. I think Western comes out with a victory. I think they win 27-23 over the Illini. I think it'll be close, but I think they do come away with a victory. So basically I'm saying 4-point win, so take the spread, take Western and the spread right there. Now Michigan's playing Colorado this weekend, and they defeated Central Florida this past weekend 51-14. It's their first win being ranked in the top 5 in quite a while. Remember the last time they ranked 5th? They lost to Appalachian State. Didn't happen this time, thank goodness. However, in the game, there were some good things. Michigan did block 4 kicks. 2 punts, they blocked partially. They blocked a field goal partially, and they fully blocked a field goal. So they were really good there, and hopefully we're going to see more of that this season where we're going to see them block some kicks, punts, and field goals. Their offense, I thought, looked pretty good. Wilton Spate, once again, played very, very well. Found his receivers downfield, found Chesson, found Darbo. They did a really, really good job. He did a really good job hitting his receivers. However, Michigan's running game did not get established very well. They didn't have a lot of big runs in this game like you saw against Hawaii, where you saw Chris Evans break through the line, where you might see Ty Isaac bully some people. Davion Smith didn't really bully any people in this game either. And the other thing was Michigan gave up a couple of really big runs in this game for touchdowns. One of them was almost a 90-yard touchdown that they gave up. They've got to key in on that and not give up the big plays. They're not giving up the big pass plays, but the thing is, if they're going to give up big run plays, that's bad. So Michigan's defense has got to play a little bit better than what they did. They did get started off pretty quickly. I mean, they won 51-14. They did dominate, but you can't give up big plays and hopefully you're gonna win big like this. You're not gonna win big every game like this. You're not gonna go into Ohio State and score 50 points. You're not gonna go to Michigan State and score 50. You're not gonna go to Iowa and score 50. And I just named Michigan's 3 toughest opponents right there. Although Wisconsin's looking pretty tough too. Of course, they're in the top 10, ranked number 9. But I mean, they had that one win over LSU. We'll have to see really how good Wisconsin is in the coming weeks when they play some better competition. They only played Akron this past weekend, so Akron's not that great. I'm just going to say that. But I thought Michigan, Wilton Spate, like I said, he did very well in the game. In fact, actually, let's run down some of the scores or some of the stats in the game. And in fact, we'll actually go back and run down some of the stats in the Western game too in just a minute. So passing, Central Florida was only 6-22 for 56 yards. So Michigan in the passing defense doing very well. However, they gave up 275 yards on the ground rushing to Central Florida. You can't do that. You can't do that and hope to win games. I'm just going to say, the one guy had an 87-yard run for a touchdown. You can't give up big plays like that. Spate, 25-37, 312 yards and 4 touchdowns. Like I said, he looked excellent in the game. Michigan only 119 yards on the ground on 41 carries. Davion Smith led the way with 38 yards. Chris Evans had 35. And that's why I'm saying right there, I mean, he had a long of 17. Smith did. Evans a long of 18. McDoom had a 16-yard run. But I'm telling you, Michigan didn't have the explosive running game that we saw against Hawaii. They've got to get that established heading into Big Ten play, or else, this isn't going to be like cupcakes in the park every week like you might be facing right now, where you can, hope to win on the passing game. If you can't run, the defense is going to key in on that pass. So Darboh, 5 receptions, 111 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 7 for 86 and 2 touchdowns, and Cheston had 4 receptions for 84 yards in the game. And Jabril Peppers had a 35-yard punt return. Kenny Allen was 3 of 3 on field goals for the day. Now let's go back and find Western Michigan's. Well, actually, first, before we do that, let's talk about Michigan playing Colorado this week. This is not a Colorado team, by the way, that you're going to see that was there the past few seasons. A one that's going to get blown out every single week. This is an improved Colorado team. They're showing it. Yes, they've only played their in-state rival, Colorado State, but they dominated them, and they played Idaho State and dominated them. And I know they're not the greatest opponents, and they're probably not going to come in and beat Michigan. Don't think I'm saying they're going to come here and beat Michigan, but I think they're going to give Michigan a better contest than what Hawaii or Central Florida could. Colorado is not going to win. Michigan's a 20.5-point favorite in this game. However, I don't think Michigan's going to cover that like they have in previous weeks. If they could somehow do come out and dominate, I think it'll be a great sign. But I don't think Michigan, with the way they've been showing, they not being able to run the ball, and their defense giving up big plays in the run game, we could be seeing maybe a closer game than what people think. I really think the score of this game might be Michigan 35, Colorado 20. I think that's what the final. I'm going to predict that that's the final score. 35-20, Michigan wins. The key is what they're going to have to do. Don't give up the big plays on defense this week and establish the run game and keep Wilton Spate going. He's playing very well. Keep the momentum going for him. And just get that run game going. That's the thing. Get the run game going. Control the clock. Keep Colorado's offense on the sideline. That's going to be the key. Like I said, their offense is playing pretty well so far this season. They've got a senior-led bunch, too. They've been through all of this turmoil, for 4 years of losing. I think they're getting better. They're getting competitive. They're turning it around. But don't expect the miracle at Michigan. This isn't going to be the this isn't going to happen. No Cordell Stewart type play is going to happen at the end of this game, and shouldn't come down to that. If it does, boy, my prediction was wrong and we're in trouble. I hope it doesn't come down to that. So let's go to the Big Ten Conference scoreboard. We'll run down the Big Ten scores, then we'll run down the Mid-American Conference scoreboard, and then we'll get into some stats for Western Michigan. So Maryland defeated Florida International. That happened on Friday, 41-14. Ohio State dominates Tulsa, winning 48-3. Wisconsin demolishes Akron, 54-10. Iowa shuts down Iowa State, 42-3. Nebraska was in a dogfight against Wyoming into the third quarter, but pulled away with 28 fourth quarter points, winning 52-17. Penn State was on the short end against their rival Pittsburgh, losing 42-39. Cincinnati shuts down Purdue 38-20. Rutgers got down 14-0 early to Howard, but scored 52 unanswered points, winning 52-14. Minnesota ran away from Indiana State 58-28. Indiana was up pretty big early on against Ball State 30-3, hung on and won 30-20. And Illinois loses to North Carolina 48-23. Now to run down the Mid-American Conference scoreboard now. As soon as it loads here. Ohio defeats Kansas 37-21. Bowling Green survives against North Dakota 27-26. Eastern Illinois defeats Miami of Ohio, scoring 14 fourth quarter points, winning 21-17. In quadruple overtime, North Carolina A&T defeats Kent State 39-36. Toledo demolishes Maine 45-3. Northern Illinois gets stomped on by South Florida 48-17. And Missouri dominates Eastern Michigan, 61-21. So let's get you some of those scores stats from the Western game, and they're 70-21 demolishing of North Carolina Central. By the way, in that game, I forgot to mention that linebacker Robert Spillane was ejected for his second unsportsmanlike conduct penalty in the second half of that game. He got one in the first half and had one in the second half as well. What happened was a North Carolina Central player came in and hit Spillane in the helmet, actually. This player got called for targeting and got ejected. But the player that came in and delivered the hit couldn't even stay on his feet, ended up falling to the ground after he delivered the hit. Spillane stood over him, must have said a few choice words, and then promptly got tossed from the game. So not good there. Not sure if two unsportsmanlike penalties and getting ejected in the second half leads to him missing the first half against Illinois next week, or if it's only a targeting call. That I know a targeting call would definitely lead you, and if you get ejected in the second half, leading you to miss the first half of next week's game. But not sure if being ejected for unsportsmanlike conduct leads to that as well. If it does, that's a key loss in the first half against Illinois, and Western's defense would have to step up. So we'll have to wait and see if that unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, getting ejected, does cost him the first half of next week's game. So anyways, in the game, Zach Terrell, 15-22 for 255 yards and 4 touchdowns. How about Jamari Bogan, 17 carries, 131 yards, 1 touchdown. Levante Bellamy, 16 carries, 121 yards and a touchdown. Jarvion Franklin, 17 for 91 and 1 touchdown. And Devon Tucker even had a touchdown in the game too. 359 yards rushing for Western Michigan on the day. That's impressive. North Carolina Central only had 106 yards rushing and 209 yards passing. So Western, I thought, did a pretty good job defensively, even though they gave up 21 points on the day. Corey Davis, 7 receptions, 150 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And of course, you saw Darius Phillips. He had a punt return for a touchdown, a 66-yard punt return for a touchdown. And Butch Hampton, he did not have to actually kick any field goals in the game, just 10 extra points. But his leg definitely probably got a workout from that, I would definitely say. Western was 10 of 14 on third down. North Carolina Central was only 4 of 15. They had 315 total yards. 11 penalties for North Carolina Central, 96 yards. Western 7 for 82. Surprisingly, no turnovers in the game. That high of a scoring game, no turnovers. And that's the thing Western needs to do. They need to force turnovers. They did not. They forced one against Northwestern. That was that fumble. They did not force any in this game. They need to do that in the future. Force turnovers, pick off passes, force some fumbles. They did control the clock, 34 minutes, 50 seconds. Western had it, and they had 31 first downs on the day. Now, let's quickly jump over to the NFL, talk about the scores from this past weekend over there. Denver beats Carolina 21-20. Trevor Siemian in his debut, I thought he did okay. He did have a few interceptions in the game. He did have a tip ball at the line. And you know, the interceptions, unfortunately for him, came when Denver was down near the red zone of Carolina. That's the unfortunate thing there. He needs to stop the turnovers, but the defense was able to step up, hold Carolina into 3 second-half points. Denver came back and won the game, and Graham Gano missed a 50-yard field goal in the waning seconds of that game. Otherwise, Denver would be walking out of there with a loss on opening night. But thankfully, they were able to come away with it. And Denver, I thought, had a pretty good running game as well, so they need to continue that. Green Bay defeated Jacksonville 27-23. Baltimore, in a low-scoring affair, defeats Buffalo 13-7. Houston, in Brock Osweiler's debut, defeats Chicago 23-14. Carson Wentz gets a victory as they defeat the Browns 29-10. Robert Griffin III out for 8 weeks. Tampa Bay defeats Atlanta 31-24. Minnesota, behind a strong defense, defeats Tennessee 25-16. Cincinnati kicks a late field goal, defeats the Jets 23-22. Oakland defeats New Orleans 35-34, scores a late touchdown, and they decide to go for 2 and convert. San Diego blows a big lead against Kansas City, 24-point lead. Kansas City wins in overtime 33-27. Seattle scores a late touchdown to defeat Miami 12-10. The Giants defeat the Cowboys 20-19. New England over Arizona 23-21. Pittsburgh defeats Washington on Monday night 38-16. The woes continue for the Redskins on Monday night. And the Los Angeles Rams in their regular season debut, shut out by San Francisco, 28-0. And we got one more score. The Lions, 39-35 winners over the Indianapolis Colts. The Lions game this time around, opening week, they win. It almost reminded me of last year against San Diego. They started out just as hot. They actually got up by the same score, 21-3 in the game. But they were able to hold on this time and win instead of losing. Somehow the Lions let Luck drive down, score a touchdown with under a minute to go, but Stafford was able to get the Lions down into field goal range with 8 seconds left to go in the game. And Matt Prater comes out and makes a field goal. And by the way, Prater had missed an extra point in this game, so the Colts led 35-34. Not good. They get back down there. They make the field goal. The Colts tried a lateral play on the kick return. I thought one of the Colts players was down at one point. They didn't call him down, but then I saw that he threw a forward pass. They did call him for that. They threw it out of the end zone anyway, so it would have been a safety no matter what. So the Lions got 2 more points at the end of the game when they really didn't matter. They didn't really need it at that point. But Amir Abdullah, great game for the Lions. Lions had a great rushing attack, by the way. And Stafford, I thought, played really well. Didn't make any mistakes. We'll have to see if that continues coming up this next week. The thing is, the Lions' defense looks pretty bad. And that's not good because they're not going to be able to score bunches on every single team in the NFL. So we'll have to see if the Lions can possibly turn it around on the defensive side of the ball. So this next week, the Lions take on the Titans, 1 o'clock on CBS. I think the Lions win this. I think they do win this game against Tennessee. I think their defense is probably going to give up some points, but I think they win this. The Titans' defense still is not great. 2 of my favorite teams actually taking on each other in this game, so I can't wait to see it. Actually, I can't see it. I actually have to work on Sunday, but I'll catch what happens, though. Don't worry. After when I get home, but Lions, I think, win this at least 35-17 over Tennessee. And Denver gets to take on the Colts. Taking on the Colts at 4:25. Andrew Luck coming to Denver. How are they going to be after this past week? I don't know. Their defense for Indy could still be bad. But can the defense shut down Andrew Luck, and can Trevor Siemian not turn the ball over for Denver? I think Denver wins. I'm going to say they win this one 27-20 over Indy. I think that's going to be the final score of that game. And by the way, that game is on CBS as well. And I forgot to mention, Western Illinois, 4 o'clock on ESPN News. That's Eastern. All these times I'm saying are Eastern Standard Time. Michigan, Colorado, 3:30, Big Ten Network if you want to catch that. So let's quickly go over to Major League Baseball and talk about the Detroit Tigers, as they are right now in a series against the Minnesota Twins. Tigers won last night 4-2. Hopefully they're going to continue this streak. Indians lost last night. Orioles lost last night. So the Tigers, 6 games behind the Indians, and they are 1 game behind the Orioles for the second wild card spot. Now, can the Tigers, continue their winning ways? That's what we're all wondering right now. In this series against, last week in Chicago, I said they'd sweep them. They lost 2 out of 3. I said maybe they would win 2 out of 3 against Baltimore. They lost 2 out of 3. Not good. Not a good week at all for the Tigers, but they started it off right this week. They started off right, winning 4-2. They play the Twins tonight. I think Matt Boyd's on the mound. But we'll give you my predictions for this week for the Tigers on what they should do. Now, the Twins, they've beat up on all season. The Twins have only beat the Tigers twice. So I'm hoping that they can continue their winning ways against the Twins. I don't see why they wouldn't. And so, excuse me for a moment. My screen is my tablet here is acting really slow. Bringing all the stats up. There we go. All right, we've got a 7-10 start against the Twins tonight. Boyd is pitching against Gibson, and then Sanchez will go against Duffy on Wednesday. And then Fulmer against Santiago on Thursday, and that's a 1:10 start. Now, even with Boyd's been doing better. I think they win. Sanchez, he did well against the Twins last time. I think he does well again, and Fulmer gets to win. I think Tigers sweep the Twins. Maybe they win 3 out of 4, but I say they sweep. Now, this weekend at Cleveland, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 7:10, 4:10, and 1:10 start. And the 1:10 start is on TBS. You're going to have Verlander against Kluber, Norris against Carrasco, and Boyd against Bauer. Tigers are going to have any chance to come back and catch Cleveland in the division race. They have to win these games. If, let's say Tigers win the next 3, Cleveland, let's say, wins their next 3 as well. Tigers are 6 back heading into the series. They could trim it to 3 games with, only a handful of games left. But maybe Cleveland loses another one in there. Tigers, sweep the Twins, and they can get to within 2. If they lose this series, if they lose 2 out of 3, Cleveland's got the division no matter what happens the rest of the way. I don't care. It's going to be Cleveland's division. The Tigers this year have won 1 game against the Indians. They've got to change that. It's been, pretty dominant for the Tigers recently against the Indians, but not this year. They have not dominated them. I say Verlander gets the win if they produce runs for him. That's the only problem. They didn't do that this past weekend against Baltimore. 1 run they gave Verlander. 1. That's it. They got to give him a lot more than that. And you know what? I will say the Tigers win 2 out of 3 against the Indians. I'll say they win 2 out of 3 there, and actually I'll change it. And I say they win 3 out of 4 against the Twins. So that would mean the Tigers would go 5-2 over the week. That's pretty good. Better than last week where they went 2-5. So that's what I'm saying. Those are my predictions. Hopefully they turn out fine. Hopefully you enjoyed this edition of Sports Talk. Like I said, tried up a few different things this week, talking about some the more disappointment teams over the weekend, and some more that controversial play with Central Michigan. So hopefully you did enjoy all of that. So the long editions of Sports Talk are probably going to continue through the end of the college football season. So I want to thank you for watching and thank you for subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel for more content. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Links are in the description below. Drop a thumbs up on this video if you did enjoy it. Also, post any comments in the comment section below. What did you think of the ending of the Central Michigan-Oklahoma State game?